Hello and welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara, Week 9.
Hello.
We finished episode 41 of Santa Barbara from September 24th, 1984. Now, Kelly tells Joe that she will see him whenever she wants, which he likes, but that she isn't necessarily convinced that he's innocent. So Joe figures the best way to do that is to have Kelly sit in on a meeting with Dominic.
Mm-hmm.
So he makes an arrangement to meet Dominic later and tells Kelly that he's going to hide her.
And Kelly's a little bit skeptical about this because we remember back a few weeks ago when Dominic was there and Joe had Dominic with a gun on Dominic and had called Mason and the police came and Dominic made an escape. So Kelly was all ready to believe him then. It fell apart, and even though she's feeling a little bit more favorable towards Joe now, she's still a little skeptical about whether Dominic really exists.
It's interesting that Joe never says, both Santana and Cruz have met Dominic.
I found that interesting. Mm-hmm. And the other interesting thing I found, just in relaying this right now, is that we still don't really know who the second person was who bopped Joe over the head a few weeks ago.
And I don't think Joe ever actually asked if
No.
Dominic had an accomplice.
No, and Joe doesn't seem to have followed up on that. So
maybe the head injury gave him slight amnesia.
Maybe.
Didn't realize quite what
maybe.
happened. So Joe goes to La Mesa to look through documents, and he looks at the picture of Sophia. CC pulls a framed photo out of his drawer, and it's the same photo of Sophia. Mm-hmm. Of course, without the 2LL on it.
Yes.
Joe then sees Warren and Lionel at La Mesa and thinks perhaps LL could be Lionel Lockridge.
Which is what we were thinking, too.
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad it's not dragging out. Like every time we come up with a thought, within a day or two, it's, they follow through on it. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Lionel and Warren are talking about Warren learning the business, the investments and the books. And then Lionel tells him about the land that was lost. And Warren is upset by that and says, Dad's, should not have let that happen, basically.
Yeah, and they both worry about what Minx is going to think.
Mm-hmm. Later, Mason arrives. Warren's no longer there, so Lionel and Mason trade insults. Mason shows up drinking a margarita, and Lionel greets him with, "They used to have strolling mariachis here, now they have strolling margarita drinkers."
And it goes downhill from there.
Yeah. Mason complains to Lionel that the deed hasn't yet arrived, and if he could be put in jail for delaying the sale. So Lionel says he's looking into it, and then he says he looks forward to playing the tape for CC. That also tells Mason that he's going to destroy him. So, basically what Mason told Veronica he was going to do to Lionel, Lionel is now saying he'll do to Mason.
Yeah.
Ted has a brilliant idea that the space that the kids have all been looking for to hang out, perhaps they could rent that motel that he and Lakin stayed at that one night that was vacant. So the realtor shows the gang the motel, and other than the fact that they need someone who's 18 to sign for it, everyone seems to agree it's a great place, and the realtor will make contact with the vendor to see about leasing it.
So I wondered, first of all, where they were going to get the money for that. I'm assuming this is maybe something Ted can tap into his trust fund or his savings for, or maybe talk to CC about.
I mean, if it's all the kids from the whole school,
yeah, that's true.
There's so many rich people there, you would think they can all pitch in.
Yeah. And I also wondered whether one way they could get the property would be to bring Warren in to sign the lease, since I'm assuming he is technically an adult. And he's been saying this episode to Lionel about how much he wants to pursue real estate. And I also wondered if somehow this might be of use to the Lockridges in their ongoing struggle with Mason. Maybe not in terms of the specific beachfront property, but maybe this might be a gambit in the longer game they're playing.
Yeah. I was wondering if maybe the owner of the motel is someone we know, and it'll be a surprise, and there'll be some hitch there.
Yeah, that's another possibility, too.
Santana and Cece make plans to go up the coast for dinner and dancing, someplace that Cece knows. Hopefully it's not the Yucca Flats Motel.
Yeah.
Cece leaves. Santana has a meeting with her attorney about the contracts, I think. And then as Cece leaves, Mason arrives and gets another free drink out of Santana.
Yep.
And wants to discuss that time when she was a kid that she wanted to marry him. And she remembers it the opposite way.
Yeah.
And anyway, long story short, Mason says he's always wanted them to end up together, and she should think over the benefits of marrying someone like him.
And this is sort of an interesting discussion, because one thing we know that Mason doesn't is that Santana's already aiming for his dad.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's many levels to why she's doing this, but certainly her dad could offer her as many benefits as Mason could.
Mm-hmm. Mason's clearly thinking he's the highest level person she could possibly be seeing, so why wouldn't she go for him?
Exactly.
Now, back home, Cece argues with Kelly about Joe's innocence, and Gina phones to invite Kelly for dinner, and Cece ends up taking the phone and saying that he'll have her moved to the presidential suite. So he calls up Peter and says, move Mrs. DeMott and her son into the presidential suite. And we find out that Stockman DeMott, I don't know if we know his name was Stockman, but Gina's husband was a friend of Cece's.
And he's the one who's just had a heart attack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it seems like he was probably Cece's age.
Yeah.
So Gina's married this older man, and maybe they couldn't have kids, and that's why they ended up adopting Brandon.
Yeah.
So Santana shows up to talk to Peter about the decor, and Peter says, I've got to rush to do this thing for Cece at the presidential suite, but if you ride with me, we can talk about it in the car.
Mm-hmm.
And later, Veronica, I guess, tells Cece that Santana and Peter are on their way to the presidential suite, and Cece realizes that Santana could run smack into Gina and Brandon.
Yeah.
So he races over there, and he gets there before Gina and Brandon arrive, and he's like, "Oh, let's all go down to my office right now."
Yeah.
But unfortunately, Gina and Brandon step off the elevator before Cece can get Santana off that floor. And he just introduces them all and keeps watching Santana's face to see if she has any sense. This is her son. And,
Yeah.
she had Brandon shake hands and have a moment. And then Gina says, oh, he usually doesn't like to shake hands with strangers.
Yeah.
And later, Santana says she doesn't feel like dinner anymore. Was thinking about her son, because when she met Brandon, they're probably a similar age. So
Yeah.
to take her mind off it, Cece kisses her, I guess.
I guess so, yeah. He seems quite enthused about kissing her. I'm not quite sure why that was the right moment for him to do so, but he does.
Yeah, he probably just wants to stop her thinking about Brandon.
But I was struck by, to me, I don't know obviously quite how Santana's going to find out. I assume she is, that Brandon is actually her son. But I imagine this moment will be quite pivotal, not only because it is when she first meets her son, but because there is something very almost cruel, really, about the fact that Cece has forbidden her from even inquiring about her son, won't tell her anything about it. And at the moment when she is standing right there shaking the boy's hand, he's not facilitating any kind of a relationship. She's right there with the boy, and he's not going to let her know it.
The first thing Cece says is, this is Santana. So I thought, is he warning Gina not to say anything? Does Gina know
Yeah.
which baby she has? But if she does, she played it very low key.
She did,
She
yeah.
didn't, react at all, and she introduced, Brandon in a normal way, and didn't try to rush off. So, but that'd be interesting to know if Gina actually knows where Brandon came from.
Yeah, and if it does all come down to CC, then it will be interesting, and I suppose this will unfold over time, to see just what his motivations were for, treating Santana's pregnancy in this way, and the adoption process in this way, and for keeping it a secret in this way. It'll just be interesting to see what his process was for doing that, because it does at this point all seem to come down to him.
Now at home, Mason is probably drunk, quoting Shakespearean sonnets about love.
Yeah.
When Kelly shows up, and the talk quickly veers to Joe. He's trying to make sure she doesn't plan to go back to Joe.
Yeah.
He says it will all end in violence. And she says she's going to see Joe, and that's the last time she wants to hear advice from anyone in the family about that subject.
Yeah, exactly.
So she and Joe go to the warehouse. Kelly hides behind some boxes. Dominic pops up, but didn't seem to have noticed Kelly. I guess it's that back door that the policeman found was unlatched, that Dominic came in, whereas Joe and Kelly came in that side door that we always see leading to the parking lot. So Joe says, we need to go over everything, and gets Dominic to repeat the events of the night of the shooting. But eventually Dominic starts to get suspicious and says, are you taping this?
Yeah.
Because, obviously it's like he wants to get Dominic to say all these things. And as they're arguing, Kelly pops up as a way of stopping the argument. And then Joe pulls a gun on Dominic quickly and says that they can trust Kelly. Kelly gives a rapid-fire series of questions to Dominic, like, why didn't you come forward earlier? I was a fugitive. Why were you at the party that night?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask your father for a job. And then it went to...
he's a pilot,
or something. So he wanted
yeah.
to fly airplanes for CC, and who are you? I go by the name of Dominic, so mostly stuff we know, although some surprising things.
Yeah.
And maybe Dominic just made that up on the fly. But, it's a question we had for quite a while. Why was Dominic at the party? So maybe Dominic's either got a real reason or a fake reason ready to go.
Although if Dominic's not a pilot and somehow they try and force him to demonstrate that could be problematic. That would be an awkward thing to stage.
So anyway, if Dominic is Sophia, I don't know if Kelly would recognize her. She was probably pretty young when Sophia died.
What about if Dominic was Eden? I mean, she
then
was,
she would. I would
Yeah.
recognize her quite readily.
Yeah.
Well, if Dominic pulls the hat down really low.
I guess I'm wondering, now that Kelly's in the circle of trust, if you will, how long Dominic can continue on in this way. If Dominic is, in fact, someone, if not part of the Capital family, then obviously connected to it. Because that is one of Kelly's questions, is how do you know so much about our security systems and, how to get into the house and where Channing's room is and so forth. So I'm wondering, it was already, I think, really tempting fate with Joe and his connections, just knowing the family from the past. But if Kelly's now involved, how is Dominic going to keep this performance going without revealing his/her identity?
And that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
So we're going to watch episode 42, and we'll be back.
See ya.
Hello, and welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara Week 9.
Hello.
We've watched episode 42, original air date September 25th, 1984. And And Cece and Santana decide to have a night in. That is their entire episode.
I have to say, I found this part of the episode a bit gross.
Is it because Cece's being played by an old man?
Well, they spend their whole conversation reminiscing about how Santana was a little girl when Cece first met her. And then they're in bed together.
Well, she says, stop thinking about me as a little girl. And then he says, I have. So that was a quick reversal. Then they talk, and then after they go to bed, they talk about Channing and Sophia as well.
Still gross.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, though, because I guess this is a like father, like son sort of thing as well, because that's what we saw Mason doing with Santana last time Mason was over visiting with her.
Mm-hmm.
And he was angling to get her into a relationship, if not into bed. So.
Mm-hmm. Cece was reminiscing about how he remembers her and Mason flying kites together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, they've slept together.
I'm just saying, I didn't find
it
it romantic to watch that.
Peter walks into the mansion demanding to know where Kelly is. Mason says, I didn't hear the doorbell.
Mm-hmm.
Not a member of this family yet.
Nope.
So he says, the way I think about it, this might actually work out better.
Mm-hmm.
If Kelly dumps you for Joe, then you're out of our hair.
Yeah.
Then I can mop up Joe Perkins at my leisure.
Yeah.
So things don't go well for Peter in that.
No, well, this whole episode was a bit of a little bit of a wash for Peter anyway, as we'll explain.
Mm-hmm. Peter's actually being followed at this point in the episode, but he doesn't know it yet. Now Lionel and Warren talk about Warren learning the business.
Mm-hmm.
Then Warren brings up the thing about, people in the town don't think Lionel's a very good businessman. This sort of mirrors stuff that Mason said, stuff that Augustus said.
Yeah.
So Lionel says, most gossip has barely a kernel of truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then Warren says, well, what about this thing with Sophia Capwell? What are you talking about? Oh, he had an affair with Sophia Capwell. And he says, well, it's not true. And he says, so you didn't know her? I said, well, I didn't say I didn't know her. So Lionel spends the whole time trying not to admit to anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then Warren says, what about that weird thing where Sophia got kidnapped for a few days? And Lionel says, oh, so long ago I barely remember that even happening.
So to me this kind of came out of nowhere. It's kind of interesting that Warren just suddenly brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of seems to me like the writers came up with this kind of interesting angle, and now they're really pushing it for all it's worth.
It seemed very forced for Lionel to start talking about it. The transition from, people are gossiping that you're a bad businessman to people are gossiping about you and Sophia it was very forced unless we, retroactively see something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still a fascinating storyline, and I definitely want to see where it goes. I just wouldn't have expected that conversation to come up between Warren and Lionel, especially at this point where they're discussing Lionel bringing Warren into the business.
Mm-hmm. And then they transition to talking about Sophia's death.
Yeah.
And Lionel just says Sophia's death was very tragic, and then he doesn't want to talk about that anymore either. So, which is interesting now that we're theorizing that Dominic might be Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to hear more about her death.
Yes.
And the circumstances surrounding it. So they've started talking about it a little bit. I assume we'll be given little breadcrumbs as time goes on.
I expect so.
Now Dominic says he can't reveal his identity to Kelly, but Kelly ends up deciding that Dominic is trustworthy anyway.
Yeah.
Just has a feeling about Dominic.
Yeah.
So, two guys have been following Peter since he was at work. And when he gets to his apartment, they jump him
Yeah.
and tie him to his chair and gag him, and someone we've never seen before shows up, who we later find out is named Ginger.
Yeah.
And Ginger spends the entire episode telling the viewer about Peter Flint's big secret, which we've never even thought that there was anything before Shoe Salesman. But apparently Peter is really an orphan named Antonio, who had run away from foster homes and juvenile hall, and ended up working as a gigolo for Ginger in Miami, where he was quite skilled, she mentions.
Yeah.
And the last time they saw each other, Peter pulled a gun on Ginger. So she's not happy. She saw him in the newspaper when the engagement was announced, and she thought, oh, that's my Antonio. So she's come to get $250,000 as payment for all of his transgressions.
Yes.
And she wants it in a week.
Yeah.
So he says, well, that's funny because Kelly's about to dump me. I'm not going to get the $250,000 at all if I don't marry her.
Yeah.
And then Kelly shows up at the door, and so the thugs all hide while Antonio is told to get rid of her quickly. And she's like, I met Joe's witness, Dominic, and I think he might be innocent. And Peter goes, oh, that's good, that's great. Yeah, that would be great, worth exploring if Joe might be innocent. That's so good for Joe.
Yeah.
And
complete 180.
Kelly's kind of dumbfounded by everything Peter says, which is basically just to get her out of the apartment as quickly as possible. But he sends her on her way relatively quickly, and under the circumstances, Ginger gives him 2 weeks to come up with the money.
So, just a couple of things to me about this new revelation. First of all, I think it's very interesting when you think about this and when you think about Peter's apparent fake identity as a physics teacher. And I just kept thinking, how does that work? I can see how he might be able to get a job at Lyman Prep. We know he's a grifter and a con artist. Maybe he managed to, bribe or blackmail one of the board members or something like that. But remember, he's actually tutored in physics. And it seems to me if you haven't had a lot of education, pretending to be a physics teacher would be a bit of a stretch. All I can assume is that he has some really great natural talent for math, maybe. And I would also assume perhaps he was tutoring some of the younger students rather than those who were a little more advanced, which then puts a whole other sort of unsavory light on the fact that he was apparently getting a bit handsy with his students.
Well, I'm wondering if, how thoroughly were his credentials checked when he got his job at Lyman.
Yeah.
Maybe, I was thinking maybe he was, maybe Mr. Bottoms was one of his clients.
Yeah,
and, he had something over him. If he ever refers to Peter as Mr. Tops, perhaps that'll be a clue.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think it may be just a plot hole that the writers have forgotten, but maybe we'll find out how Peter got his job at Lyman Prep as a physics instructor. So, there's a new character in town, Ginger, who I don't recall, but when I looked up the IMDb thing, I thought, I kind of remember that name, but I really had no memory of the character or the actress at all. So it'll be interesting to see how this pushes Peter. He's now got a number of people against him in town.
Yes.
So something's got to give somewhere. Let's see if Peter finds a way to get this $250,000 somewhere. Will he somehow rush the marriage to get the money, or borrow it from Kelly?
Or do a bit of blackmailing on the side?
Because Augusta doesn't have it, because she was asking him for $100,000 just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So he may need to ramp up the use of that two-way mirror and blackmail everyone who stays at the Capel Hotel.
Yeah.
So Joe gives Dominic a call to thank him for talking to Kelly, and Dominic seems generally happy with the events, even though Joe pulled a gun on him again and tricked him.
Well, that's what they do.
So finally, after a hard night of Dominicing, Dominic takes off his hat and his boots, his gloves, and then we see him take off his false beard. So that beard that we suspected looked a little fake was actually false.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Dominic takes off his jacket, we see that under his white shirt he has a black bra. Dominic is a lady.
Who knew?
You guessed it.
I think a lot of people.
I think maybe with my
that.
having originally seen it only on audio, I may not have had any idea. And obviously, if I'd heard this episode on audio, I would still not know that Dominic was a woman. So it may be several more months before I find out what someone else on the show does.
I think to me, look at Dominic, and it seems fairly obvious. But it's interesting, Kelly didn't seem to bat an eye at the idea of Dominic being a man. So maybe it's the dim lighting down in that warehouse or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is it for this episode. We managed to compress things very quickly. So, looking forward to all of these new characters joining the show. Ginger isn't even in that cast photo, so that's an extra.
Well, in a way, we met two new characters this episode because we met Antonio, who we had previously known as Peter.
Mm-hmm. That is it for episode 42. We will return after watching episode 43 of Santa Barbara.
See you later.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We have watched episode 43 from September 26th, 1984. Mm-hmm. Dominic puts on her disguise.
Yeah.
And mutters a lot to herself, saying she can't let people know who she really is until she finds the real killer. She will avenge Channing's death, and then the charade will be over.
So this is making it seem more and more like she could be the supposedly dead Sophia, or another member of the Capwell family, maybe.
It's interesting that because she has to hide her identity until it's all over. I don't know if she needs to hide them from the family, or she needs to hide them from the real killer, because she would be in danger herself.
Well, if Sophia's supposed to be dead, then it would be quite a revelation if she wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
If Sophia is if Dominic is someone like Eden, well, Eden's supposed to be in Europe, so there would have to be some connection made between why she's not in Europe and dressing up like Dominic.
If it is Sophia, and she's been telling Joe that Sophia has nothing to do with it, then I'm not quite sure why she needs to hide her identity. But clearly there's a lot more we don't know.
Yeah.
Joe, while waiting for Dominic, Joe asks Kelly if she's ever heard a rumor about Sophia and Lionel Lockridge, and Kelly says something like, "That's preposterous."
Yeah.
Dominic arrives, is annoyed that Kelly is being dragged into this.
Yeah.
Doesn't want Kelly to know about the secrets. Joe starts blabbing about the robbery and how Channing was investigating that, and Dominic thinks Kelly will be in danger the more she knows. So then Joe comes to the conclusion that Dominic is hiding too much and tells Kelly he's going to break into her apartment, well, his apartment, and while there he finds some women's clothing, thinks that Dominic has a girlfriend, and then Dominic walks in while he's going through the mail.
Yeah.
So that will be to be continued. Mr. Bottom says that a lot of people get divorced because they don't agree on things. Lincoln and Ted seem to agree on a lot of their things. A few things towards the end that he tells them they should get their story straight on. But Jade and her husband, Michael Adams, the soccer star, disagree about everything. Ted ends up getting a detention because he sticks out his tongue at Mr. Bottoms. And Michael Adams, Jade's husband, is playing against Danny in the big game this afternoon against Santa Barbara City High. The school has slightly changed its name now. So he meets Danny in the gym while people are practicing, and they trash talk each other. And then later, when the gang is meeting with, I think, the owner, I guess, of the motel they want to lease, the owner says that she heard on the radio that Santa Barbara High was beaten 10-1. And Danny is quite glum because of that. Anyway, she is very taken with the Capwell house and the Capwell name, and says, well, if any of you if you can find someone over 18 to sign the lease, and if you can get a Capwell to guarantee, the payments,
preferably CC,
then she says there's no reason she wouldn't rent them the hotel.
So just one or two thoughts about the whole scene with Mr. Bottoms. I do wonder a bit about the value that all these really wealthy parents are getting out of the Lyman School. I mean, not only are half the facilities closed, but Mr. Bottoms is a Latin teacher, and he's teaching this weird family studies class, which doesn't seem to have much curricula or anything. And plus, they've already had Peter Flint as a physics teacher, who, as we know, is actually a gigolo. So, it just, I think I echo Ted's point from yesterday of, why are they paying all this money? Seems like a very substandard experience.
Mason probably went to Lyman Prep. I wonder if he'd notice if things went downhill since his time there.
Maybe that's
or
what it
Kelly
is.
And Joe, too.
Yeah.
Santana dreams about Brandon for some reason. Dreams about Cece for some reason. Mason shows up and tries to find out where Cece was last night. No, Mason doesn't show up at Santana's. Shows up at home. Comes in after a late night, and Cece says, "You've been drinking a little too much lately." Just in the middle of a different sentence, he threw that in there. And as we literally haven't seen Mason not drinking for the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So Mason tries to push him on the new woman. Cece says, "Oh, you also lack direction since you decided not to run." And Mason says, "Will this be my new stepmother?"
Yeah.
So Cece grabs him by the lapels, from what I could tell. I mean, the camera angle was a bit weird, but that's what I thought. Anyway, he's disgusted with Mason totally. Mason talks a little about the birthday present, but I just don't think it's going to go over well.
No.
Then Cece whips back over to Santana's place to give her a bracelet. And then she tells him about the letters that Cruz and Joe have.
Yeah.
And she says, so they know that Channing and I had a baby. So Cece's upset that Joe has stolen these letters, he assumes from Channing's room. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter whether it was from the gazebo, they were still stolen from Capwell property. So Cece might send someone after Joe this coming episode.
And Cece's anger is very much directed at Joe rather than Cruz. I mean, there isn't really any indication, at least in this little scene, that he is even considering rescinding his job offer to Cruz at this point. And we don't know how it'll play out in the next episode. But he seems very focused on Joe.
Yeah, maybe Cece will come between them to stop Cece from trying to press charges or anything. I mean, Mason will just say, well, we don't have any evidence it was him. We don't know where these letters were. So it's possible, because he's done that before. Maybe he likes having Joe out. In fact, he says something like that to Peter in the last episode. So Joe's actually helping them get rid of Peter.
Yeah.
Then Cece says to Santana that maybe Joe will try to hurt Santana's son, so it's good that he's hidden. So I don't know if that was just for Santana's sake, to try to get him to stop thinking about her son again, or... I mean, there's simply no logic to it.
No.
Then Peter shows up to tell Cece that Joe has brainwashed Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
So Cece tells Peter to deal with Joe Perkins. So there's something negative might happen now with Joe again.
Mm-hmm.
Peter's tried to do things to him before. So Mason shows up at Santana's and wants her to help him decorate for Cece's birthday party on Friday.
Right.
This is Wednesday's show. So this is 2 days before a big birthday party, and Mason hasn't even thought about it yet, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, considering this is such a pivotal event, certainly in Mason's life, and it seems like in a lot of people's lives, they seem to be quite late in the planning for it. I mean, unless it's something where they only have the venue for a short period of time or something, then maybe that would make sense. But yeah, I think in most normal circumstances there would be a lot more planning going into this.
Yeah.
On the logistics side, anyway.
I mean, I didn't even know Mason was in charge of planning it, but Cece's been hanging out with the designer for days and hasn't mentioned it, so he's obviously not in charge of his own party.
Well, Mason seems to be involved in a lot of things.
That's true. It's another one of his many
Apart from
duties.
being a full-time lawyer,
getting some land, and
occasionally pursuing political
hotel.
office. He's
company.
involved in the hotel, involved in the hotel decorations, involved in the party
Calling
planning.
the airport to see what Cruz is up to.
Yeah, he's got to coordinate his sort of continually growing network of spies, and he's very busy.
So Santana asks if he's still worried about the tape, and he basically says he'll be drummed out of the family soon.
Yeah.
And Cece doesn't trust anyone. And then, without realizing Santana's the woman Cece's been dating, he says that he starts to talk about whoever it is Cece's been dating. Says that Cece dated a lot of women between Pamela and Sophia,
Yeah.
and that they were all meaningless to him. So, and then he mentions that he hears from his mother from time to time by mail or phone, and she's living in Mallorca.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't sound like she ever comes back to Santa Barbara.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of interesting information about Pamela, that she's, unlike Sophia, she's not dead. She's alive and well and writing
just
to
got
Mason.
divorced. And
Yeah, living in an exotic location. It doesn't sound like she's particularly close to Mason. He's not living in Mallorca with her. And it sounded to me, but it's hard to tell with Mason, but he seems a little bit dismissive of her, maybe because she is not of Capwell blood, maybe not worthy of the family somehow or something. But then that could be Mason's general manner anyway.
one thing I hadn't noticed originally from the last episode is that the newspaper article said that Sophia was Cece's fiancée at the time that she was kidnapped.
Right.
So that's an interesting piece to it.
Yes.
So.
And we learned that Kelly was 7 years old when her mom apparently died.
Mm-hmm. So we can do some calculations as to her exact age. We put together everything. Now Ginger suddenly shows up at Peter's place and says she's changed her mind. She can't wait that long for the money. She's only got 1 week. And then she threatens Kelly's life.
Yeah.
Peter keeps trying to contact Kelly, but she says she doesn't have time to talk because she has a dress fitting. I assume this is for Cece's party.
Yeah.
Cece shows up at the dress fitting and tries to convince Kelly that Dominic is a fake that Joe hired to pretend to be a witness. Then Peter barges in with a duffel bag full of, cash, clothes, and says they have to leave town together immediately.
Yeah.
And then Kelly says that's crazy, she's not leaving town. And then Peter turns around and realizes that the dressmaker has been Ginger the entire time.
Yeah.
And she makes a threatening gesture behind Kelly's back. And that is the cliffhanger.
So Ginger has multiple skills. She's a madam and
dressmaker.
And a dressmaker. and apparently runs some sort of criminal ring as well.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite clear to me what Peter's plan was throughout this episode. I kept expecting him to come up with creative ways to hit on Cece for money, or to be scheming some sort of a blackmail scheme or something to try and get the money. I had two ideas about him being there with the duffel bag. I thought either he was trying to genuinely run off with Kelly and just put the whole thing behind them, or I thought maybe he had it in his head to elope with Kelly, because he had actually already sort of raised that with CC, and CC actually said something like, oh, well, maybe it would have been better if you had done that. That would have eliminated the Joe Perkins threat.
Mm-hmm.
So it occurred to me that maybe that's actually what Peter was trying to do. He was trying to get Kelly to elope with him, and then he's going to have access to all her money.
That's a good thought, because I was thinking, where's he going to go on the run with her with no money?
Yeah.
Is he going to keep running from Ginger the whole time? And what's he going to tell Kelly
Yeah, yeah.
during that time? And would she go along with that? I mean,
yeah.
And where would they go? Yeah. Well, that's it for episode 43. We will be back after watching episode 44.
See ya.
This week's spotlight is on Melissa Brennan, who played Jade Perkins on Santa Barbara. Melissa Brennan was born on March 14, 1967, in Eatontown, New Jersey. Melissa has been married to actor and singer Scott Reeves since March 1980. They have two children, Emily Taylor and Lawrence David. Before Santa Barbara, Melissa has one credit listed, a movie called Somewhere Tomorrow, with Sarah Jessica Parker and Elizabeth Shue. Melissa appeared in 87 episodes of Santa Barbara as Jade Perkins, younger sister of wrongly accused murderer Joe Perkins, starting with episode 1 and ending with episode 266, which aired on August 12, 1985. After Santa Barbara, Brennan appeared in a number of TV movies, before landing the role of Jennifer Horton on Days of Our Lives, whom she has portrayed in over 1,450 episodes, starting October 9, 1985, 2 months after she left Santa Barbara.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We've watched episode 44 from September 27th, 1984. And Ginger threatens Kelly. So Peter drops the idea of leaving town with Kelly.
She doesn't threaten Kelly directly. I mean,
And
she
she
doesn't
stands
wave a gun
behind
in
her
Kelly's
and
face. Yeah.
holds up a rope as if she's going to strangle Kelly. So then she says that dress wouldn't look as good with blood all over it.
But she says those things to Peter. I mean, Kelly
Yes,
has
no,
no
Kelly
idea
is
her
not-
life is in danger at all.
No, she goes to change, and then Peter gets rid of Ginger.
Yeah.
So Peter asks Kelly how things are going with Joe, and she says she believes Dominic.
Yeah.
So Peter still plays along like this is a good thing if Joe's found innocent. And then he goes to the office and confirms with Veronica that he has authorization to write checks up to $50,000 from the company checkbook.
Yeah.
Writes himself a check for $50,000 and then thinks about Kelly and tears up the check. So I don't know how he's going to get the money. I thought he was going to pay himself $50,000 a day for 5 days or something.
Yeah, I was sure he was going to embezzle it. But then I was also sure he would be blackmailing someone by now, too.
I mean, he still might embezzle it
Yeah.
as his other options run out. Because the next thing he thought was to go to Augusta, and he tried smoothing things over with her, but that didn't go well. And when he told her he needed $250,000, she said, "Well, I don't have that, and if I did, I don't think I'd get it back." So
I was really surprised he asked her, actually. I think that's a measure of his desperation. Because he, of all people, knows that Augusta doesn't actually have as much money as she appears. And that was an entire plot line, actually, a few weeks ago, where she had phoned in Joe Perkins breaking into the Capwell house as an attempt to get rid of Joe and get payment from Peter for doing so.
Maybe he found out that Lionel had bid $10 million and figured, oh, he must have hawked some stuff, and there is some extra cash lying around that Peter could tap into.
But even at that, how would Alexa or Augusta necessarily access that?
So Augusta realizes he's being blackmailed and asks if some nude centerfold of him in the physics teacher's journal had popped up. So, and he tries promising her that he can pay her back as soon as he marries Kelly, and she says, I can just see you breaking into her piggy bank on your wedding night.
Yeah.
So he is out of luck there. And when he goes home, he finds Ginger and her two thugs watching one of the tapes she made of him from 10 years ago. So that's the day Peter had.
It seems more and more as well that he's looking to getting rid of Joe somehow, because another thing that happened today was everyone was goading him with the fact that Kelly would rather hang out with Joe than him. So his prospects for his marriage being the payout he's hoping for are dimming slightly. Because at this point he doesn't even know if he's going to hold on to Kelly long enough to get married.
Now at Dominic's place, Dominic walks in on Joe, flipping through her mail. She tells him not to do that again or she'll disappear.
Yeah.
Joe asks Dominic about Lionel and Sophia being together, and Dominic says, no, I don't think that happened. Joe steals a matchbook that's lying on the counter, and when he leaves, Dominic says that he's getting too close.
Yeah.
At home with Marissa and Kelly, Marissa's happy to see Kelly come over.
Yeah.
Kelly thinks the matchbook is a good lead, and Joe phones the number and finds out it's from a place called Beacon House, that is an institute for the emotionally disturbed in Anchorage, Alaska. So he immediately makes plans to go to Anchorage.
Now, to me, that might fit in with Sophia being kidnapped at some point and being traumatized by it, or Sophia making all of that up, and maybe, to me, it could fit in with Sophia somehow, or it might fit in with a completely different character who is either on the show or not, whose mental health history we don't fully know yet.
So you think Sophia may have spent time at that institute?
Yeah, that was one thought I had.
Augusta arrives, and kind of says hi to Kelly. Doesn't really interact with Kelly that well, but she offers her help and says, all of us who believe Joe are trying to help him. And then Kelly mentions they've got some good leads, and that the angle they're really pursuing is the robbery, because Channing was on the trail of the person who broke into the Capwell mansion, and they think the robber is probably the killer. So, Augusta seems to be a bit taken aback by that. Kelly actually says the killer must be getting scared by now.
Yeah, so I'm assuming this little visit, which seemed kind of random actually, but I guess Augusta is still trying to keep somewhat close to Joe to see what he's finding out and how close he is getting to the truth.
So while Joe makes his way to Alaska, Augusta meets up with Warren as quick as she can and says, oh, Joe and Kelly are going after the person who robbed the Capwell estate. He kind of says he doesn't know anything about that, and she's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. Just thought you'd like to know about that. And he says, oh, I don't care. Then he goes home, pulls out his strongbox, and in it he's got a newspaper clipping from the day after the robbery, and it says, robbery at Capwell House. Police have no clues. So he crumples up that paper and burns it in the fireplace.
So to me, what this whole little episode suggested was that perhaps Warren was involved in that robbery. and Augusta suspects that. And to me, this put a whole potential new angle on some of her actions to date, where she's been so anxious to get rid of Joe and so anxious to kind of keep track of him and keep him off track, I guess, while he's been there. And I'd been wondering if maybe she was involved in the murder, but now I'm wondering if she knows or suspects that Warren was involved in the robbery and is worried that maybe Warren will be implicated somehow in the murder and is trying to protect him.
Mm-hmm. It seems like it.
Yeah.
She may not think he's the killer, but she may be aware of the robbery. I mean, the way she was talking to him, it was as if she had to tell him this information right away about they're after the robber, and it's as if she assumed he was the robber.
Yeah.
But obviously he pretended he was not.
So it might be that a lot of Augusta's actions vis-a-vis Joe, maybe not sleeping with him, but vis-a-vis Joe, so far have really been to protect her family rather than being entirely self-serving.
It's a huge twist on it.
Yeah.
Now Lionel is listening to the tape of Mason talking about Cece, and Minx comes in and complains that she intercepted the property tax payment. Instead of sending a check for $2,000, he had sent a check for $200,000. And he said, I don't know where my mind was. And she said, well, you've been making a lot of mistakes lately, and it's having a negative effect on your children.
Yeah.
Now Gina shows up to thank Cece for letting them stay at the hotel. I can't remember if that scene was at the hotel or at the...
It was. Yeah.
And then there's a knock on the door, and it's Gina's sister, Summer Blake. Mm-hmm. So Summer comes in and immediately says to Gina she wants to go to the beach. And she drags Gina down to the beach, and they end up at the beach bar, and immediately Warren tries to hit on her. Mm-hmm. And she kind of lets him try for quite a while without success.
Yeah.
But I was actually saying when she was introduced, I had mentioned that I didn't remember her character at all. I mean, I knew there was a Summer Blake, just, in my memory, but I didn't remember what she looked like or what her storylines were. I knew she was Gina's sister, obviously. And when she came on, I thought, first I said, I wonder if Cece's going to try to fix her up with Ted to try and get his mind off Lakin. And then a few minutes later I said, I wonder if she's for Warren.
Yeah.
Because he has, other than his flirtations with Jade, he hasn't had any good prospects in that area. And sure enough, it looks like they brought her on as a love interest for Warren.
Yeah, looks like it.
Mm-hmm. And she she's looking for a job at the Santa Barbara Museum of something. And she had been working at the LA County Museum. So Augusta said it seems to be a step down. Gina said it seemed to be a step down, but she said, well, I like the idea of working in a smaller museum. So, so that's interesting, because we know Lionel used to lecture on anthropology. So there may be some kind of linkage there with her working at the museum and Lionel with all of his artifacts and things and his sarcophagus. There may be some interaction with them too.
And it's not completely unlikely that Cece may have patronage of the arts as well. We haven't seen that side of him very much, but if she's at a posh museum, there's all sorts of opportunities for her to rub elbows with some of the rich people in Santa Barbara. Mm-hmm.
Now, if Summer's secretly working for Lionel, then I'll be totally shocked. Now, Cece tells Mason the situation with Joe is getting worse. And Mason says that he tried everything he could to keep him from getting parole, even bribing other inmates to start fights with him.
Yeah.
So now we see what Mason was doing before Joe got parole to keep him in jail. He wasn't maybe doing things on the on the legal side, but he was actively working to keep Joe in there nonetheless. I guess Joe resisted, rising to the bait when he knew his parole was coming up.
We're also seeing just how far Mason's connections go, that he actually was able to connect with prisoners in San Quentin to get Joe into trouble.
Mm-hmm. So Rosa arrives with a package from Pamela, which is intriguing. Don't recall this at all. Cece says he hasn't heard from Pamela in 10 years. Mason mentions that once in a while he gets a birthday card from her, a birthday present. So Cece decides he wants Santana to come to the party as his date.
Yeah.
So she agrees to that. She tells Rosa that she's coming to the party, and Rosa said, no, you must have misheard. He would never invite someone who wasn't family. And then she says, no, I'm coming. And then Rosa says, I think you might be deceiving yourself.
Yeah.
So then Mason invites her to the party as his date, and since Cece wants to unveil her at the party, she still keeps the secret that she's seeing Cece. She just says she has another engagement and can't go to the party as his date. So then he spots her bracelet and realizes it's very valuable, and also seems to think he may have seen it before.
Yes, he doesn't seem to immediately identify it, but it seems very familiar. And he does identify right away that it's a very expensive piece.
Now, I'm imagining that it maybe used to belong to Sophia. If it belonged to Pamela, then I think Mason might be really annoyed. But
yeah.
Maybe Kelly will recognize it, although too late. Kelly mentions Joe's gone to Anchorage, so Mason tries to get more out of her, but she said, I'm not telling you anything about Joe. Then Mason asks her if Peter's happy that she's seeing so much of Joe, and she shuts him down there as well. And then Rosa brings some ribbons so that Mason can tie up the gift for his dad, the deed he has, rolled it up. And so that's tomorrow, I guess. Tomorrow's Friday.
Looking forward to that.
Oh, and over at the Lockridge house, Lionel is making a little gift for Cece too.
Yes.
He has a tape recorder with the tape all set to go, and he's put a piece of tape on the front that says "Play Me."
Yeah.
He's packaging up in some nice styrofoam so it'll stay, whole. And he sings a wacky little happy birthday song to Cece. So I can't wait to see this episode.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be a really fun episode. I'm feeling like Mason may not have a great day at the end of it. Between the tape maybe playing, the announcement regarding Santana. Who knows?
Maybe Kelly will bring Joe as a date.
Well, though Joe's supposed to be in Alaska.
Oh, that's right. So at least that's...
I don't know. Maybe Cece will be underwhelmed by the deed. Who knows?
Yeah, he might be already in Cece's bad graces before the tape was even played.
Yeah. Yes, we don't know. I mean, if Mason starts the party early and is thoroughly drunk by the time the festivities start.
That's true. He's been told not to drink anymore, so...
I'm also going to be really curious to see how everyone else reacts to the news of Santana, assuming that announcement does take place. Because I would think that, obviously it's going to negatively affect whatever relationship she has with Mason. But it'll be interesting to see how the other kids react as well. And...
I wonder if Ted will bring Lincoln.
Yeah, that'll be fun too. Also, it does occur to me that there are some little hints in there that this relationship Santana has with Cece may not go entirely as she hopes it will either. Mason's told her that Cece had lots of women before he met Sophia. Rose has been warning her that she is not Sophia. What if Sophia suddenly pops up, if not at the party, but at some point in the near future? Where's that going to leave Santana, especially if Cece's kids and Santana's own relatives have not been thrilled about the match anyway? I sort of feel like Santana's putting a lot of eggs in one basket here.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see.
If Rosa's right about only family being invited, then I don't know if we'll see Cruz or Gina or Summer at the party, even though they are people theoretically you could imagine Cece inviting.
Yes.
And if it's just family, might be a bit of a small get-together, so I think they might pad it out with some of those close to the family.
Well, I'm sort of hoping we'll get to see Eden finally as well.
Yes, that's right. There's the threat of Eden showing up.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, all right. We'll be back after we watch episode 45.
See ya.
Welcome back to Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We have finished episode 45.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Warren Lockridge is looking through his strongbox at his coins that he's gotten from somewhere.
Yeah, it looks suspicious. That seems to be what was stolen all those years ago.
And he has a few more clippings that he hasn't burned yet. So.
Yeah.
Augusta comes in and he hides them. One nearly ends up being discovered, but he grabs it. And she says that she tried to stop Joe Perkins from breaking into Channing's room. So this is all stuff Warren didn't know about it, and Warren wants to know why Augusta is telling him all these things.
Yeah.
And she says, well, if Joe is cleared, the Capwells are going to be interested in who the killer is. And Warren says, what's that got to do with me? And Augusta says, yes, that's right. We won't say any more about this.
So I think this really does confirm, perhaps, a little bit more what we were talking about last episode, which is that maybe a lot of Augusta's actions vis-a-vis Joe Perkins up to this point are really an effort to protect Warren, because she knows he's implicated in the robbery that took place at the Capwell house involving the coins, and she's worried that maybe he had something to do with Channing's murder.
I mean, her extreme reaction to Joe coming back, it wouldn't just be about a few coins being stolen.
No, I don't think so.
So it's not clear whether Warren has twigged to the fact that Augusta knows he took the coins, or what he's thinking, because we never really see his thought processes after Augusta leaves. So.
No. But this was the first time we saw Warren's bedroom, I think. Or his apartment. I guess he lives in a separate place. Oh, that's right.
I was thinking it was his bedroom, because Augusta kind of...
Unless maybe he's still got his old bedroom in the house.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It did look kind of teenage.
Because that would be where you got the strongbox last time, right?
Yeah.
So, then when he goes to work, Summer comes up to him and tries to chat, but he's busy looking through the phone book. He's trying to remember the name of the pawn shop.
Yeah.
So this recalls the pawn ticket that Joe found amongst Channing's things. And
that's right.
When Joe had phoned the pawn shop to get some records from 5 years ago, they'd said, our records are in storage across town. So Warren remembers the name of the pawn shop, Ernie's Pawn Shop, and gives them a call, and wants the records from 5 years ago, and he says, that's in the basement of a place across town.
Yeah.
So it seems, this is the same pawn ticket, the pawn shop. So if Warren has some coins, maybe he pawned something else that he stole from the Capwells. And he's worried there's a record of it somehow.
That's what I thought, too.
Now Minx arrives, escorted by 2 police officers and Ambrose, the chauffeur.
Yeah.
And they have arrested her for trespassing. And she's adamant that she was on her own property, and Lionel has to admit to her that the beachfront property was lost, and worse than that, it was auctioned off to a Capwell.
And her reaction is about what we would expect. She is absolutely furious and upset, and she has her riding crop with her and has already done quite a bit of damage to the police officers who brought her home. So,
and to the night watchman,
Yeah.
or the watchman who turned her in. So he's willing to settle just for having his torn clothes replaced.
that's right.
Ted and Lakin get Kelly to co-sign for their lease for the motel.
Mm-hmm.
That's it for that storyline this week, this episode. Eden phones Ted to say that she's on her way.
Yeah.
So we're going to see Eden at some point.
Yeah.
Lionel's gift arrives and gets added to the stack.
Mm-hmm.
Mason has sort of been browsing all the gifts, and he takes a look at this one. It says, "From an acquaintance."
Mm-hmm. But I wondered if that was actually Lionel's gift, because there were two gifts that came in at the same time.
Oh.
And I thought when Lionel was wrapping his gift, it looked a little bit bigger, but maybe that was just my perception.
Well, maybe someone else has sent some surprises.
Yeah.
I mean, who else has a tape? Peter.
Maybe
Peter sent a tape as well.
Maybe there were 4 copies made. Maybe 3 others.
Veronica sent one as well, just to be safe. Mason mentions to his siblings that Cece is seeing someone.
Yeah.
The phone rings, and it's Ginger, and she leaves a message for Peter that he's only got a few days left. So that's a bit cryptic. Peter arrives, and he wants to talk about Joe Perkins, but Cece says they can talk about Joe tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to enjoy his birthday.
Yeah.
And Peter talks to Mason about if a friend of his knows about crime, can we have the people locked up without the friend's name being dragged into it?
Yes.
So he was trying to get Ginger and her cohorts locked up without us
Mm-hmm.
somehow being, responsible. Yeah. Mason says that's not really anything, but he immediately says, clearly it's you, and what, what's going on, and he says he's being blackmailed, and Mason says, did they find out about your centerfold and physics teacher monthly? So he tells Mason it's for $250,000 and that they'll kill him if he doesn't pay. And Mason says, well, if you get Joe Perkins back into prison, I'll see what I can do.
And it is some measure of Peter's absolute desperation at this point that he has approached Augusta a couple episodes ago and now is actually approaching Mason and even confiding in him a little bit that it involves an illegal activity.
I was a little surprised that he didn't say they threatened Kelly.
Yes, I was too.
Because you would think that
would be a little more motivation, I would think.
But maybe he's worried that information will just make the family want to cut ties completely with him.
Yeah, and cut him loose.
Yeah. So he breaks into the Perkins garage and hides something under the seat of Joe's motorcycle.
Now, I'm assuming it's maybe drugs or something like that.
Yeah, a small package or something.
Yeah.
Maybe it's gold coins.
And I have to say, this entire week since Ginger showed up, Peter has not been looking well. He has not been his suave, calm self. He has been looking completely miserable and panicky and sort of beaten down. So you can tell that this is really weighing on him, and he seems very desperate.
Now, earlier in the day when Santana and Cece came back from up the coast, Cece said that she would be the surprise of the party. Cruz stops by to see her while she's getting ready and says, "Oh, I've been to Acapulco. Talked to Dr. Ramirez and all his nurses, and I know everything about him. He has links going way back to C.C. Capwell. He was an intern who suddenly magically got promoted very high up in the hospital. Oh, and C.C. knows where the baby is. And Santana's trying to shut him up the whole time. She said, look, you can't say anything about this to anyone.
Yeah. So,
I don't know if Cruz has figured out why she doesn't want that spread around, that she already knew it. We never saw a scene. But later, we don't get a chance to see them talking at the party at all.
But we do know that Cruz has already cottoned on to the fact that Santana and CC are maybe he probably doesn't know they're an official couple yet, because that's going to be announced at the party, but he knows they are interested in
Mhm.
each other. He knows they are having relations.
So maybe he'll figure that out.
Yeah,
Confront her at the party, saying, "Oh, that's why you didn't want me to say
yeah,
anything, 'cause
yeah,
you're trying to get at Brandon or at your son another way,
yeah.
or your baby. I don't even know if Cruz knows it's a boy." Gina, Summer, and Brandon tell Cece they'll be staying in Santa Barbara for a few more days.
Mm-hmm.
He says it's fine if they continue to stay at the presidential suite.
Right.
Now, Cruz arrives at the party, all dressed in a white suit,
Mm-hmm.
and Mason says, "Oh, this isn't the company picnic." So Cruz says, "I was invited," which
Yeah.
Mason's a little annoyed at, because all week we've been hearing it's only family.
Yeah, it's suddenly with Cruz showing up, the event, at least in Mason's eyes, has become just slightly less exclusive. You can see that annoys him.
And so he decides to gossip with Cruz about who Santana's dating,
Mm-hmm.
and he says that she's dating Bill Larwin, the elderly lawyer that Mason's seen come out of her place once or twice.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprising assumption to make,
Mhm.
I thought. But,
Yeah, well, he's got people following people, and I don't know. I guess if he had someone following Santana, he'd know it was Cece. But maybe he's not suspecting because of the work they're doing on his bedroom. But I mean, he spends many hours there. So.
I also thought another possibility was that Mason doesn't necessarily think she really is dating Bill Larwin, but he's trying to get a little bit of a rise out of Cruz. I thought that was
because he mentioned he was an
kind
elderly
of
man.
needling him a little bit.
Yeah. And Cruz said, "Oh, Mason, you wear that egg on your face so well."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Santana arrives, all dressed up, and Mason, of course, assumes she's changed her mind and wants to go to the party with him.
Yeah.
And she says, "No, I'm here with someone else." And then Cruz happens to walk up, and Mason just assumes it's Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
So he has that thought in his head for a few seconds until Cece comes up and kisses Santana
Yeah.
for quite an extended period of time, and Mason's mouth drops open. He stares for most of the episode.
Yeah, we don't actually hear much more from him in the episode. Because
No.
it's just,
There's some
Stunned.
distractions occur shortly afterwards. 'Cause
yeah.
throughout the episode, we have been viewing the interior of the cockpit of I thought it was a private plane, but then someone said later in the dialogue it was a fighter jet.
Mm.
But either way, it's been racing along with no one at the controls because the captain and a blonde woman are naked in the back for the entire episode
Mm-hmm.
as they fly towards Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
And the woman tells the pilot to circle the Capwell mansion at a very low
Mm-hmm.
speed, and Cece and Santana go out to see what the noise is, and he says, "Oh, I can even read the numbers on the plane. They're so
Mhm.
low." And then inside the plane, they discuss the fact that the woman is going to a birthday party,
Mm-hmm.
and she puts on a parachute. So she's planning to jump out and land in the Capwell driveway, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how it ends.
Yes. So, next episode, I'm assuming we will actually see this woman land, I assume safely,
They
And we
hid
will
her
find-
face from us.
we'll find
quite
out-
cleverly throughout.
who she is and what she looks like. But we know Eden's on her way, so it's probably, I would think, Eden.
It seems to be a good bet that it's Eden. It's
Yeah.
interesting that they would say at the beginning of the episode, Eden's coming, but
Yes.
then hide this woman's face the entire time. But then we don't know what Eden looks like. So, but she seems to be about the right age from the.
Well,
corners
she's
of her
got
head
the
that we've
Capwell coloring, so.
She's blonde. Yes, that's right. All right, that's it for the week. It's an exciting week of episodes and new characters showing up.
And I think the only thing I'm curious about is how many episodes this party is going to take. Because we
Mhm.
just saw the very, very beginning of this epic birthday party in this episode.
We don't have a huge number of people, guest-wise, but we've
No.
got Eden's arrival. We've got Mason's birthday gift to open.
Mhm.
We've got Lionel's birthday gift to open. We've got Cece yelling at Mason to look forward to.
Yeah,
Perhaps Lakin is showing up as Ted's date. We don't know.
we don't know.
And then the whole CC Santana thing will have to be gone over. So I don't know if they can fit all that into one episode.
And maybe there'll be a few more surprises. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know what Pamela sent.
We don't know what Pamela sent.
So there could be another surprise in there.
We don't know
She has
if,
another tape.
There'll be some kind of phone call or something from Joe Perkins in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where Dominic is.
Yeah. So this could be an exciting week, and there's a new character showing up towards the end of the week. So we'll see
another new one.
if he interacts with the party, if it's still going on, or if his storyline is going to be with a different group of people. We'll be back next week, week 10.
Week 10.
Of Santa Barbara.
See you then.